views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. Last week, Governor Hochul awarded contracts for a major green energy initiative to power New York City with wind, solar, and hydropower that would originate from upstate New York and Canada. The proposal includes new transmission lines that would create approximately 10,000 jobs, bring $8.2 billion in investments, including, they say, to support disadvantaged communities. The plan also says it would reduce the city's reliance on fossil fuels, lower carbon emissions, and significantly improve air quality and public health. The plan as written would bring those transmission lines down from Canada, where the energy would be converted to two facilities located in Queens. While this all sounds wonderful, Bronx environmental justice advocates were quick to note that the original plans for this project would put one of those converter stations in the Bronx, as indicated on this original map. While the idea of locating the industrial station near the Bronx Children's Museum was soundly rejected by elected officials and others, soon after there were other hard-to-swallow secret plans for the Bronx. In a confidential memo obtained by BronxTalk, the siting of that converter station was then planned to be located in 4 or 5 acres of Van Cortlandt Park, where the memo admitted it would mean substantial intrusion on municipal parkland for non-park purposes. So while the current plans indicate the converter stations will be in Queens, Bronx leaders and advocates who have seen the borough abused by fossil fuel peaker plants in the South Bronx, a water treatment plant in Van Cortlandt Park in the North Bronx, and of course highways that have bisected through our borough for generations, they've noted that documents for this project in the past have had huge swatches of information blacked out and redacted from public view. So there's lingering concern that there's a lot not being said about what the implications of this environmental effort have for the borough of the Bronx. Now, we've got a panel of Bronx experts with us tonight, and we're going to try and unravel what this new energy plan might mean for our home borough. So to start, let's welcome the Assemblywoman from the 84th Assembly District in the Bronx, Assemblymember Amanda Septimo. Nice to have you with us.
It's great to be here, Gary. Thank you so much for having me.
So let's just start with a general thing. Governor Hochul announces all these great amenities, announces the prospect of thousands of jobs, announces the prospects of $1 billion for green infrastructure to deliver energy without using fossil fuel. What do you think?
Well, Gary, I'm really excited about the state, Governor Hochul and the state specifically really taking seriously the commitment to growing green infrastructure and green jobs here in New York, and really demonstrating that seriousness by committing meaningful funding to these efforts. But I think like any good thing, there are some serious concerns that we want to make sure are addressed throughout the process.
Well, among the concerns that I brought up is, I hate to put it this way, a lack of confidence in the materials. So all this stuff came out, it was, put out for a lot of people, and yet you and other Bronx advocates who've been concerned about environmental justice say, well, wait a minute, it's got to come from the north. It's going to go through the Bronx somewhere, and we're going to talk to the other advocates. Are you concerned that we're not getting all that we should be getting?
Absolutely. I think we want to make sure that we're leaning into transparency at every step of the way. A series of redacted reports that paint an incomplete picture about what this process will ultimately be doesn't really speak to transparency in the way that a process like this deserves. A process that's going to have such a wide impact, specifically on a community like the South Bronx that has already dealt with a lot of environmental impact adverse environmental impact over the years. And then, I think it also begs the question of really what transparency is going to mean in this age for us. When we're talking about partnering with community and genuinely taking into account community needs and perspective, we can't be in a situation where you have plans that are adopted and don't ever account for what community is actually asking for and concerned about. And then I think there's also, the idea that, there's also the idea that the NYSERDA public comment periods are opening after plans get submitted. Again, if we're genuinely wanting to connect with communities, make sure that communities are heard at every step in the process, then this information gathering process is flawed because it leaves out community by design.
There was success in keeping the converter station away, as I noted earlier, from the Bronx Children's Museum. Are you concerned that, gee whiz, we know Related Companies is one of the companies that has interest in this? Are you concerned that with their property there at the old Bronx Terminal Market, that they're going to say, well, now that we got the kind of approval for the contract, let's put it here, or let's do something here that's unfavorable?
I think there's always a healthy skepticism in the South Bronx as it relates to business and industry, and making sure that people's lives and health don't come at the expense of business growth or development or expansion. And I think nothing specific around this company. I think for every company, I'm always watching them with two eyes, as they say, to make sure that we're all walking the straight and narrow together.
And before we let you go, what would you recommend? And I'm guessing that the other advocate's going to say something similar, and that would be in the way of transparency and input. It would have been nice to have the discussion and have the round table we're having tonight, to have that before they start awarding very large contracts.
And Gary, you took the words right out of my mouth. I think we should certainly make sure that we have processes like this. It's never too late to do the right thing. And this is a process that we know is flawed. We have people speaking up at every corner of the community speaking up about it. There's no harm in saying, we've made a misstep. We're going to retreat and we're going to do it the right way from the outset. And so that's what I hope to see happen.
I'm laughing. I've been around a little while. Good luck with that. For having them say we've made a misstep and then redo. Wow. And I can see the other advocates know that this is a tough road to hoe, so to speak. Anyway, Assembly member, you can stay as long as you'd like. I know you have a busy day. We do appreciate your input. Let's then move on to the founder of Bronx Institute for Urban Systems. It is Cesar Yoc. Mr. Yoc, what do you think? I mean, you heard the Assembly member talk about transparency and input. What is a proper way to handle a project like this? They did their background work, and then the governor goes and awards the contract. What should really happen from your perspective?
First, thank you for the opportunity to be in the show. Let me see. I am from the Bronx Community Board 1 in the Land Use Committee. So I see this all the time. Proposals come in when they're halfway done, and they ask us to advise on those proposals, but then we're not in the process when this idea started at the beginning.
So you get it after the fact, is what
you get it after. Yes. So this happens everywhere. It's not only with environmental justice; it's with almost everything. So
let me ask you this. The way it's reported and the way it's been stated, a clean energy project that could reduce New York City's air pollution emissions by as much as 10%. That's a very good start. But really, what will the project mean to neighborhoods that for years in the Bronx have absorbed projects that were purportedly for the greater good, but have ultimately hurt residents? Are you concerned that these projects, the siting of transmission lines, a converter station, while yes, it's in Queens, will potentially hurt Bronx neighborhoods and other city neighborhoods?
First, you have to look at the whole technology. This is not only the Bronx. You're talking about solar and hydro and all these things going from upstate. There have been issues with land issues, with these things being constructed in people's land. it has those things as well. So it's also not only affecting our neighborhood, it affects other neighborhoods throughout the state. And one fact is that photovoltaics and all these things do use fossil fuels. So photovoltaics use natural gas, and you use electricity and all these things, that you also use coal. So when somebody says it's 100% renewable, they're not really stating the facts. So you still have CO2 concentration, and also understand that.
And there's also,
Right.
in the case, if I can interrupt, in the
things.
case of electricity, there's also EMF, right? You're worried
Yes.
about electromagnetic fields.
Electromagnetic fields, and then it goes to our neighborhood. So, and one thing about electricity, unless you know where it's coming from, you don't know who's getting it, because you
Right.
can't separate electricity.
So
you
let
have
me
those
ask you one more thing, because I want to bring in some of the other advocates. One of the things that's come up is that we're moving the jails out of Rikers Island, and that if there is a converter station, and this would even help the people in Queens, maybe Rikers is a place to put that. Some have said, well, the timing is not going to work because the jails won't be done by the time they're ready to build this thing. What do you think? Would you recommend Rikers?
I have an environmental science background. One thing is islands are set up for to remediate hurricane and stormwater. So when you get rid of those islands and put this great infrastructure, it has an effect on the nearby neighborhoods, because this helps with
So it's not
remediation.
it's not as simple as that.
It's not as simple as that.
Wow.
You construct a bunch of solar panels, we also don't know who's getting that power.
Right.
So unless we directly know that it's going to the Hunts Point neighborhood or all this area, it having more benefits. But we don't know where that power is going to. Plus, a lot of the solar requires a lot of large area. So I'm saying, like, you might have like 10 solar panels.
Well, I mean,
only,
you could.
Only one area could be powered.
You could do
it's more
rooftop.
complicated than that.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you could do rooftops, and we've done this with solar farms and all that. I don't want to prolong that debate, but thank you so much for your input here. Let's go up to the North Bronx, and the president of the Bronx Council for Environmental Quality is Robert Fanuzzi. Mr. Fanuzzi, nice to have you with us. You have expressed to me outside of the show great dissatisfaction with this process. I mean, the transparency, I talked about redacted documents, the notion of Van Cortlandt Park, although it's off the table now, all of a sudden showed up. Talk to me about the transparency and your concern about that.
Gary, thank you. Your show and the press release that went out on Monday is probably the first time that many New Yorkers have heard about Tier 4 and about this clean energy program. And that is a huge missing opportunity. There have been some huge omissions here that our organization has communicated to NYSERDA in August. And a couple of people in this show today were actually signatories to it and co-authors. And what we were asking them was exactly what you said before, which is before you make your final decision, ask the community where the best location for these facilities and converter stations are, so that then you might be able to inform your eventual awardee where to build things. Okay.
Rather than have it the other way around, that the contractors say, this is what we want to do. And then you go, oh, that sounds like a good idea. And then all of a sudden, people in the Bronx in particular, many of the people who are here with us now, say, hey, wait a minute, that doesn't work.
Exactly. They really could have cut down and really made this an environmental justice process. So I'll say two things, Gary. One is that I hope it's not a tragic irony, but it is an irony that an environmental justice law designed to relieve disadvantaged communities from the harmful effects of pollutants, right, did not have an environmental justice process. No community members were involved except for those who outcried when we saw what was going to happen at the museum in Van Cortlandt Park. There wasn't community input in decisions about siting, and therefore NYSERDA will never know if they chose the right place, the right company to build in the right place, because they never asked us where those good things is. The other thing is, as you noted, we are left out of the map. When you go to Clean Path, the winning proposal, Clean Path, Okay. When you go to their proposal, you go to page 19 and they bring you down to Westchester. They say, we're going to go down to Buchanan and to Ossining. And then when they say, now we're going to hit New York City, basically, which is called Zone J, it is literally a redacted paragraph.
Wow.
So
we still don't know.
No, and we are the reason this thing exists. Okay. The law properly noted that downstate has much more downstate has much less renewable than upstate, right? So this new program is designed to bring us the renewables we need. But how could you not actually include and talk about where this stuff is going to happen in the zone it's required for and built for? I'm just stunned.
Yeah, I know that you've had it already with this. You're up in the North Bronx. You're on Community Board 8. Are you still concerned about Van Cortlandt Park, or do you think?
I am concerned about the whole Bronx, and our organization, Bronx Council of Environmental Quality, sees this as more of the same to the Bronx. So you have to realize, as many people know, the Bronx is home to the water filtration plant. The Bronx is home to a national infrastructure of transportation. The Bronx is home to Community Board 1, to the city's food infrastructure. Can we afford another industrial scale facility in our borough? I can't believe that we would not be consulted about the environmental justice impacts of an environmental justice policy.
And I think what you said really strikes me as at note. There's the section out there, and it makes somebody think, that's redacted. It makes somebody think that they redacted it because they don't want to be involved in a conversation like the one we're having.
Gary, it's because they did not take this step of an environmental impact for the action. The action was Tier 4, to build in the city. Nobody ever came to us and said, what does that look like in the city of New York? Now we're going to start. I have to say the Bronx Council of Environmental Quality lives for environmental impact statements because they provide.
Because of this. We want to move on and
Thank you, Gary. Yeah.
Also with a board member from BCEQ. And the reason that Chauncy Young is so significant here is because, listen, if you're talking about coming down the Hudson River, then the Harlem River, using those waterways to get to Queens, you start to look at the South Bronx, at the West Bronx, at south of Roberto Clemente State Park. Are you concerned, Chauncy Young, that what I've been expressing before and what Mr. Fanuzzi just said, we don't know everything. And now, who knows, all of a sudden we're going to find out a secret plan that says, yeah, we had this idea, we were going to do this.
Certainly, without any question. First, there's 3 of the 4 of our guests here are board members of Bronx Council for Environmental Quality. I'm also representing the Harlem River Working Group tonight, and Cesar will probably get an invitation within the week, just because we're trying to always represent all different voices in the Bronx. So just
That's good.
Throw
That's
that
good.
out there, and then I think this is as representing the Harlem River Working Group, trying to really connect communities back to a waterfront that we've been, removed from by industrial design, by Robert Moses. But it goes much further than Robert Moses because almost every single improvement that's been done for the city has come at the cost of the Bronx. You have the Oak Point line, which is a 1.9 mile line that was supposed to bring trains instead of trucks into the South Bronx to cut down on the asthma
how did that work?
Impacts. They put the Oak Point line along the waterfront, which means you can't actually get the communities out on the waterfront for those 2 miles of waterfront. They built the Harlem River Yards, and they gave away our waterfront on the South Bronx, which now they've given away to Fresh Direct again, not giving it to the community. All of those pieces were supposed to reduce pollution and improve the environment. It didn't happen. It was, again, a poorly designed plan. Let me just 1 second, Bob.
Go ahead.
And then we also have the car washing facilities, right, which are, to support the city, but it came at the cost of the waterfront. So all these plans, Bob, are always done when the community can't address them. The fact that all of this happened and was approved before most community boards were even in session was done by design, so the community couldn't have a voice in this process.
So do you look at this at this entire thing and say this is an opportunity because we're talking about energy infrastructure, something that certainly advocates like you have been proposing and supporting all along. We're talking about this, but an opportunity might be lost because, again, it's coming down from the top and people like this are not having their voice. I mean, I see heads shaking. I mean, Chauncy, you think that that's the case?
I mean, we all want to see cleaner, safer energy, but we don't want it to be at the expense of the South Bronx, the Bronx, which is an environmental justice community. The proposal of putting the transformer on top of the mall that majority of our community shops in, across the street from the Children's Museum.
That made no sense.
A hip hop museum just doesn't make any sense, Gary, but these are the plans that they're doing for our community.
Let's talk to Mychal Johnson. Mr. Johnson, you've been fighting this. You're the co-founder of South Bronx Unite. These issues have been front and center, not only in your advocacy, but in your home life when you walk out the door of where you live. Talk to me how all this strikes you. Like, what does it make you think?
You've heard a lot from the folks who are on this panel. I mean, I totally agree and you've heard about no transparency, no community participation, but we haven't talked about the cumulative impact, any type of a community impact assessment on how this project might engage or impact this community environmentally. This is an EJ community, an environmental justice community recognized by the Environmental Protection Agency. We're starting backwards again on these projects, right? Where top down saying it's good for us, economic development, job creation, always has come at the price of our health. So it's a real shocker, but not a shocker that the process was this way. It was flawed from the beginning. Like Bob had mentioned, there was a real question to NYSERDA, a list of questions that we signed on to about assigned to send to them about why is this process so flawed? Let's slow this down. Let's do it the right way. Stop doing it the same way, expecting different results. We already were hit seriously hard by COVID because of our built environment, because of the fossil fuel power plants that we have, which there is no real clear explanation as to when and how these plants will be shut down, even with the award with Clean Path, which is not New York Power Authority, who operates 4 out of the South Bronx. When will they shut them down? We don't know. It's no transparency here. So it brings a lot of concern. It seems like the same old. And who always shoulders the burden but the community in the South Bronx, who already is holding too much of the burden for waste and fossil power plants and heavy diesel truck intensive businesses. It has to stop. It has to be better. They need to slow this down and do it a different way.
If you were asked in the beginning, aside from having community input, what would you recommend for the project itself? How would you view the thing in a way that would not impact communities? I realize transparency would be number one. You wouldn't have stuff redacted and you would have engaged communities. But I'm talking about the project itself. How would you have designed it so that you and other advocates would be happy?
The RFP should have spelled out when all respondents would have shut down those peaker plants, and especially the disadvantaged communities like the South Bronx. Our 4 peaker plants, there's no schedule of when they will come down, but part of the Community Leadership Protection Act says that these peakers should be shut down. But there cannot be any aggravation of the increased traffic in our community that will aggravate air quality. So I think instead of talking about what should not happen, how it should be happening is from the ground up. You should be participating with community members who actually have a feel for what the solutions can be. Where we place certain things is important to us, and how they will indirectly or directly impact us is most important.
You know what strikes me, and maybe we'll get a chance just before we run out of time for everybody to weigh in on this. When I hear $2.9 billion going for health impacts, that would suggest they know there will be health impacts. I'd rather do $2.9 billion for preventative of health impacts rather than say, oh, good, we're going to affect X number of people with asthma, so then we're going to build more medical facilities to treat the asthma or other airborne diseases. Certainly COVID would be one of those. That for me is very disturbing. And also, I have to say, and I did slightly couch it when I presented at the beginning, when they talk about disadvantaged communities, there's something very pejorative in the suggestion that I don't like them looking at the Bronx and saying we're disadvantaged. No, we're advantaged because we're smart and intelligent and we want to be healthy and we know what's going on. I'm sorry, that if you asked me a question, that's how I would have answered it. So let's quickly go around the room. You'll each get maybe about 30 seconds. Mychal, what should people do right now? People who are watching the show saying, wait a minute, we want this done right. What would you recommend they do?
Reach out to the elected officials and say, what is going on with this project? Why don't we know more about it? And how can we slow the process down until we can determine will there be any adverse effects on our health, on our children's health, on the most not disadvantaged, but the most overburdened community in the city right here should not have to wait till after the effect to determine if in fact it's going to hurt us. So people need to reach out to their elected officials.
I like that. And, Councilmember Salamanca, when it came to rezoning, put a law in that insisted on predetermining the effect of it before it goes to bed. And that's for, city projects for rezoning. Same kind of thing should apply here. Mr. Yoc, take about 30 seconds or 15 seconds and just tell us what you think people should do.
When I was in school, my professor said some solutions are counterintuitive. We have more energy demand. This is going to happen more because you need to provide the supply. So we need to have from the bottom up approach and also to have the community involved to see the impacts of all these things.
That's your main message is community involvement. Chauncy Young, your final words, a couple of seconds from you.
I think I would echo both of our previous speakers. I mean, I think we need to contact our elected officials. I think we need to contact our community boards. We really need to continue to put pressure on these agencies that are making these rewards and also on our new governor to really show the impact that it is having on an environmental justice community of the South Bronx.
It seems always the tail wagging the dog. I guess Bob Fanuzzi will give you a chance to have the final word. Advice for people who are watching us who are going, wait a minute, we've got good things in the Bronx. What do you think?
Thank you. My advice is to jump on the environmental impact train and watch for that review. This is the way that the state law, environmental law, has allowed public participation in massive land use decisions like this. We all need to get up to speed and participate in the environmental review process. Comments, I would say every community board should be passing a resolution about the potential impact guided through the environmental impact statements. Our Harlem River Working Group is really going to be devoting its energy to comments. And I just have to say, we have been criticized many times by people in power for our comments. And bring it on. That's all I can say. We must be doing something right.
I want to thank, Bob Fanuzzi, Chauncy Young, Mychal Johnson, and Cesar Yoc, and previously Amanda Septimo, the Assembly member, for joining us. Next week will be our 27th anniversary. We'll have a special show. Shout out to my producers, Stephen Powell and Rebecca Hemick. They did an unbelievable job. Jimmy Sullivan did our timekeeping to keep everybody together. And we'll see you next week. Let's fight for the Bronx.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.